Hello, and welcome to Wendy's Workshop. Yeah, I know the name is corny, but we're going to go with it. You're going to have to bear with me on the quality or lack thereof of this video because it's my very first craft with me or tutorial style video, and my equipment consists of my iPhone, a cheap phone holder, and a daytime light. And while I did prattle on endlessly about what I was doing in this video, it was long and boring, so we're going to speed it up a bit and I'll chat with you as we go. Thanks for tuning into my first video, which is a part 1. If you don't want to miss part 2, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. Let me start by saying that I've lifted most of these techniques from other YouTubers. Nick the Booksmith has a lot of great techniques, some of which I'm using for this project, and I'll link her channel in the description below. In this video, I will be putting together an art junk journal using an old book. While I've done a bit of art journaling, I haven't been consistent, and to be honest, the big blank pages are a little off-putting. I'm thinking that by using a junk journal with patterned papers inside, that I may be more likely to stick with it. Since this may be a long summer of staying inside, I'm hoping it will be a great distraction. So let's begin. For my cover, I'm using a hardbound book I picked up at a thrift shop for either 50 cents or $1. I tend to find my hardback books at the library for about 50 cents. Most libraries have books that they're getting rid of and you can purchase really inexpensively. This one is an old Reader's Digest copy of condensed books. I chose it because of the size. I wanted smallish pages that wouldn't be intimidating. So I've decided that I want to do an embossed cover for this book. Again, this tutorial I lifted from Nick the Booksmith, who says she learned it from another YouTuber and she links that video in hers. I tried the technique on this mini cover that I created myself just to see how well it would work for me. I think it came out pretty great, but I'm probably going to try something just a little different anyway. So let's start with the book. First, I need to cut out the current book pages and leave just the cover. For this, I'm going to use a craft knife. The brand I'm using is a pen blade, and I will slice down in between the inside cover and the book block, being careful not to cut down into the spine. And you can see that it took me a few tries to get it right, but I finally found that if I got the blade in between the book block and the spine, sort of at an angle, that it sliced right through. And then once you get the first side cut apart, the other part comes apart pretty easily. And as you can see, the book pages in this book are really aged beautifully and will be able to be used in another junk journal later. So now that I have the book cover by itself, you can see that it has just a bit of wear and tear. Because I'm going to cover the whole thing in fabric later, it should be okay, but I'm going to go ahead and reinforce the inside spine anyway. Because I'm going to use this for art journaling and I will be pressing it open quite a bit, I just want to make sure that the spine can handle the abuse. So before doing that, I'm going to clean up the edges a bit where the cover meets the spine by cutting away any excess paper. After that, I'll be using a piece of old Tyvek envelope that I received in the mail to reinforce the spine. If you ever order something that comes in one of these envelopes, don't throw it away. They are like gold. I just cut them into spine-sized pieces and save them for projects. Here you can see that I'm cutting the piece that I had down to the size for this book. When you're using Tyvek, you really do need a really strong and very sticky tape to adhere the Tyvek to the book spine. I'm going to be using ThermoWeb Super Tape because it's the best thing that I found for this type of application. And I'll go ahead and link that in the description below. I've used 3 strips of the 1/2-inch tape to cover the inside of the spine completely. ThermoWeb does sell the super tape in sheets, which probably would have worked much better for this, but I didn't happen to have any on hand, so we're just going to go with the strips. I'm going to adhere the Tyvek to the inside of the spine first, and then to each side of the book covers. I will probably cover it with paper later, so that when I install my signatures, they will have something a little easier to grip. I'm not sure how the fabric would adhere to the Tyvek. So this is the part of the video where I am telling you about how I actually had another really cute Easter project filmed for my first video tutorial. But when my 16-year-old said, "Hey Mom, I can edit that video for you," I believed him. Somehow we lost all of the footage except for a 14-minute clip. So this really cute Easter project was created with the iCrafter tunnel card die. I added a shaker pocket in the middle section just to show you another way to use the die. I'll go ahead and link below to the iCrafter site where you can find this card die and many other items that I absolutely love. It is so versatile because you can use many of the dies you already have in your stash to customize it. For mine, I used a gnome SVG with Easter accessories and sized it to fit the card perfectly. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, or back to the project at hand, as we talked about earlier, I want to do an embossed cover like I did on the little tester book. Again, I got this idea from Nick the Booksmith. I did not come up with the idea. However, I want to try something just a little bit different. On this one, I followed Nick the Booksmith's tutorial and I stenciled onto the cover with modeling paste, waited for it to dry completely, and then adhered painted fabric to the cover. It worked out beautifully, but I'm going to try something different anyway. On the little book, I created my own stencil by die cutting into cardstock and using the negative space. For my version of on my junk journal, I'm going to try using the positive die cut layered to create greater dimension and see how it works. It could be an epic fail. We shall see. So I cut each of these pieces 5 times and used a liquid adhesive to layer them, making each die cut about a 1/16 of an inch thick by the time they're finished. The flower dies were from my stash and they were the perfect size to cover this book. Once I had them all pieced together, I kind of played around a bit to see how I wanted them placed on my cover. Once I had everything exactly where I wanted it, I glued it all down using a liquid adhesive. The adhesive I'm using is a PVA pH neutral bookbinding glue that I purchased on Amazon for about $12 for a 16-ounce bottle. I'll go ahead and add a link to that below. I really love this adhesive for paper to paper adhesion. You get just a few seconds to move it around and then it's stuck and it is not coming off without tearing. Because the viscosity of the glue is a little on the thin side, it really goes a long way and it's easy to move over the surface of your paper. I buy the big 16-ounce bottle and I pour it into the little fine tip applicator. The applicator was purchased on Amazon as well, but it was about 6 years ago, so I will see if I can find that or something similar to link below as well. Okay. I think I need to paint my fabric before adhering it to the book cover, so let's get messy. For my fabric cover, I'm using an inexpensive cotton fabric. It's actually a fat quarter I bought at Walmart for 97 cents. After deciding how much I need for my cover and cutting it, I realize I need this extra little strip to hold my journal signatures. When I paint my cover, I want to paint that strip as well so that they are exactly the same color. I've decided I'm going to mix 2 colors together to create the perfect shade for summer. I wanted something bright and fun, so I used a blue and a green to create the perfect aqua. To paint the fabric, you want a really watered down paint. Since I don't measure anything, I'm going to guess it's about a 1:2 ratio with more water than paint. It took me adding paints and water a few times to get the exact shade and consistency I wanted, but once I had it just right, I proceeded to paint the fabric and the fabric strip. Since iMovie won't let me speed up any faster than double time, I'm going to have to fill in a little space here, so I will tell you my YouTube story. I've had a few videos on YouTube that I created just to show friends some project that I'd done in the past, but I'd never really created any tutorial style videos other than when I worked at Sizzix, and those were for specific work content. Because I absolutely love teaching classes, but have moved to a new area where I don't know many people, I thought that doing tutorial style videos would be a great creative outlet. So I've thought about starting the YouTube video or channel for a while, but I've put it off saying life's too busy, I don't have the right equipment, my nails aren't done, all of the excuses. My dear friend Jeanette, whose channel I will also link below, has persuaded me that I need to give up on excuses and just do it. So here I am. If you've never been over to Jeanette's channel, you really should check it out. She's a great crafter and a truly lovely person. So while I finish painting and get this out on the grass to dry, let's talk signatures. A signature is a set of folded papers that are sewn into a book. My journal is going to have 5 signatures. Before I started filming, I went through my loose, miscellaneous 12x12 pattern papers, and while I was trying to keep the colors bright and fun, I was looking more for a variety of textures and patterns. Since a lot of the paper will probably be painted or covered in some way, color wasn't really a priority. And while this is a junk journal, it is still an art journal, so having a lot of smaller add-ins and envelopes was not as important either. What I was really looking for were just pages I could alter. So most of the back sides of the paper are white, with the front being pattern, which will give me a variety from which to choose when I go to create. Because there are so many patterns, I'm hoping that it won't be as intimidating to start a page as when you're staring at a blank junk journal. These are the 5 signatures that I came up with. Now I just need to fine-tune them. If you've ever created your own book signatures before, you know that once you fold the papers in half and stack them together, the inside pages end up sticking out further than the outer pages. So once I decide exactly where each page will live within the signature, I will trim down the center pages. Let's flip through the first signature. As you can see, most of my pages are the full book size. Well, I have added in just a few fun bits and some fold-outs. I even included some canvas pages as well for added texture. I'm not going to flip through all 5 of the signatures because they're very similar other than the actual patterns on the paper. But if you subscribe and stick with me, and I promise these videos will get better, you will see the pages when I do my final flip through at the end when I show the finished journal. It's time to trim down the first signature and make sure all of the pages fit neatly together, because whenever the center pages stick out, even just a tiny bit, it makes me crazy. So let's get to it. As I go through, I will fold in the pages that need folding, round the corners that need rounding, and trim the pages that need trimming. Again, I'm only going to show you one signature because this will get tedious if you have to sit through all 5. While I'm fine-tuning, let's chat some more. I'm hoping that once this journal is complete, it can become a series as I complete the pages. Maybe even do some as a live, create with me. That is, if I can figure out how to go live. I'm hoping to have other projects in between the journal pages. The reason I settled on the name Wendy's Workshop is because 1, I like alliterations, and 2, it would be hard to pin down to one type of media or craft. I tend to be all over the board with what I like to create. Of course, I also tend to have 12 projects in various stages of progress lying around at any given time. I really like a variety when it comes to crafting and creating. I do some art journaling, some card making, some mixed media, some 3D shadow boxes, etc. What's the old saying? Jack of all trades, master of none? Well, that's me. Once I have the pages all lined up where I want them and all trimmed to fit, my fine-tuning should be complete and I am ready to move on to the next step. In this step, I will be sewing the signatures onto the strip of fabric that I painted to match my book cover. The last time I created a journal with signatures, I had to measure where I was going to punch my holes in the cover, create a template, and then punch each of the signatures to match. Since then, I got this handy-dandy bookbinding tool for Christmas, and I find that it makes it really fast and easy. Let me take you through the process. The first thing I did was fold the fabric in half lengthwise to find my center line. I then folded it in half the other direction to find exactly where my center hole would be punched. Then I put my fabric strip into the tool and lined up the top piece. I punched my first hole in the very center, which of course I just found by folding the fabric in both directions. From there, I decided where I wanted the top hole to be, and then I counted the spaces in between so that my bottom hole could be equidistant from the center. Once I had the hole placement determined, I marked my holes on the plastic tool with a marker, which I can clean off later, so that I will know exactly where to punch all of my signatures. And just ignore those little black marks that you see, because those are for a different size journal that I do, so it's the red marks that I'm using. After I had the center line completely punched, I removed my strip of fabric from the side of the tool with a channel, and I moved it over to the other side so that I could punch 2 sets of holes on either side of the center line. This will give us our 5 sets of holes that we need for our binding. After the holes were punched, I lined up the fabric with my book spine to make sure that all of the holes fit inside of the spine area. I was a little worried they were too close together, but as you can see later when I sew in the signatures, they're perfect. Now we're in the home stretch. It is time to line up the signatures and punch them using the marks that I made on the top of the tool. One thing to note is that because the signatures are slightly shorter than the fabric strip, I will need to place the signature onto the template, or the tool, about a 1/16 of an inch higher than I did the fabric piece. I marked this right on the base of the tool with a pencil so that each signature lined up exactly the same. When I used to use a template I created, I had to line up the signature pages and clip them all together within an inch of their lives to make sure I got the holes right in the spine instead of all wonky. But with this tool, I find that all I need to do is tap the pages down together and lay them into the well, and it's right about 98% of the time. Okay, we've got all of the signatures punched, and it's time to sew them to the fabric strip. I know that most people have seen this process already, so I'm going to speed it up, but I want to include it for those who haven't. I've chosen to use the center signature first because that's the way I find that it works best for me. I'm going to start by sewing down through the center of the signature and the fabric, then back in through that top hole, all the way through the fabric and the signature. Then you're going to go all the way down to the bottom hole, skipping over the center, and thread it back out through the book and the fabric, and then back up through the center. I know it sounds confusing, but if you're watching, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. You will end up with both tails of the thread inside the center of the signature. And then you are just going to tie those off in a knot to ensure that they stay in place. And then you're going to repeat this step with the other 4 signatures. And the way I do it is after I get the middle one in, I do the ones on either side and then the front and the back. For some reason, it just tends to work better for me that way. Ugh, and as I'm watching this video, I'm noticing that my fingers are still dyed blue from painting fabric. Yuck. Anyways, we are at the end. Thank you so much for watching along. Be sure to come back for part 2 where we will adhere the book cover and see if my embossing via die cuts is going to work.